and Lag BaOmer. The story of Lag BaOmer has been marginalized into images of sacrifice, of perseverance, miracles, but the power of the honesty of Rabbi Simon, son of Yochai, Rashbi, is glossed over in the interests of popularizing religious freedom, holiness, righteousness, God's intervention, and so on. But the indomitable human spirit is glossed over. There was a discussion in the Beis Medrash, in the halls of learning. How are we supposed to deal with the Romans? The Roman Empire, after all, was at the height of its power. It would be hundreds of years before Rome would taste defeat. Its tentacles entwined hundreds of millions of people. And it extended all the way to India. It controlled an empire greater than that of Alexander or of his Persian predecessors. And this Roman Empire had defeated the Judeans, the people of Judea, not just once, but 3 times. Pompey entered approximately 69 before the Common Era and imposed Roman authority over the land through his proxy, Antipater and Herod. But then there were rumblings and rebellions, and the Jews took to arms and rebelled and almost won, but they were defeated. The year 68 or 69 of the Common Era, Jerusalem was razed and the temple was destroyed. The Judeans didn't take this lying down. They were still independent and believing of the righteousness of their position. Rebellions arose in the time of King or Caesar Hadrian, an imbecile who preferred male lovers to the pursuit of truth. It's a quirk of history that homosexuality trumped religion, and for that reason Rome became Christian as opposed to becoming Jewish. But Hadrian aroused the anger of all the Jews across the spectrum, and Jews started rebelling in huge numbers, unfortunately costing them for the most part. Finally, the students of Rabbi Akiva, the religious students, had had enough and urged the rabbis to give their blessings to the rebellion that had been fomenting for over 20 years. They searched for a leader and found him. His name was Simon Bar Kuziva, known as Bar Kokhba. And he led a rebellion that initially was successful, driving out the hated Romans. Bar Kokhba was euphoric over his success, drunk by that success in the belief that he was the righteous Messiah, failed to watch his flanks. And the Romans, taking a page of Judean history from their conquest over the Greeks, engaged in guerrilla warfare until the supply lines for Bar Kokhba were broken and they could bring large amounts of military back, eventually surrounding him and destroying him. And they murdered close to 1 million of the Jewish populace. Such was the reality in the year 134 after the destruction of Beitar. About 30 years later, things had settled down. The Romans were no longer hunting the Jews. They had made roads and public improvements. The economy of Judea had improved markedly. One could say it had never been as good. The economy was booming. The students were again able to study Torah without any hindrance. And Judaism was making inroads into Rome. In fact, at one point, traditional Judaism was competing with Christianity over the number of converts. Ultimately, the Christians won. But the reason for their hatred and for their denunciations over the rabbis is because they were afraid that Judaism would overcome them and take over what they had won. From this background of secular events, the economy, improved relationships, the rabbis wondered aloud as to what should be their position regarding Rome. Rabbi Yehuda, who always looked at the actions as opposed to motivation, said we must honor their actions of kindness. They've brought wealth, peace, prosperity to our country. And despite our misgivings over their way of life, they've actually caused improvements in ours. And for that we must be grateful and honor them. Rabbi Yossi the sage, who saw both sides, remained silent, for he knew that the pursuit of truth sometimes required one to remain silent. Rabbi Simon, on the other hand, said whatever they did for themselves. They built you roads and bridges, to collect taxes. They built beautiful cities and marketplaces. But that's so that they could adorn themselves and have bathhouses and amphitheaters and houses of ill repute so they could enjoy their lives. They didn't do anything for you. For us, they did it for themselves. And motivation trumps action. Their motivation is evil. We will give them no quarter. And that is why Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was so persecuted, because he dared criticize the Romans. Now, the Romans at that time were less of a threat to Jewish survival than ISIS. And the Jewish people could have said, Rabbi Shimon is endangering us. He shouldn't have provoked them, causing him to flee and to stay in a cave for 13 years. But no one ever had the temerity to criticize Rabbi Simon for telling the truth. A group of lawyers call themselves the Southern Poverty Organization, whatever that is, and they've criticized Pamela Geller. Why? Because she told the truth. Just because it angers a despot, a tyrant, a bunch of thugs, doesn't mean you criticize the one telling the truth. Remember that.